When we think of the 1980s, what pops up? I'm sure you lived through that period of time. It was a tense time due to the Cold War, but most people like to think about the pop culture time. In that period, we think of those classic films that we grew up with, from more Star Wars to Indiana Jones, E.T., Gremlins, Princess Bride, Ghostbusters. And when it comes to the horror, that was the golden age of horror, as it was very creative at the time. And also original, too. From Nightmare on Elm Street, more Halloween, Friday the 13th, Fright Night, The Lost Boys, and yes, at least the first one, The Terminator, did have a horror vibe. However, there are at least certain 80s films that are horrific, in a sense. And when I mean horrific, more of a realistic horror that is true or could have been true. And when I mean could have been true, as in a what if scenario, while the other was true, based off of realism. And these two you probably never heard of. Both are foreign films, though one is more of a documentary type of film. Now, there was this film, and it is a foreign film. Well, the director is a foreigner, Polish actually, but I'm not going to talk about that today because, well, one, I haven't seen it, though I'm mainly focusing in this episode on the real horror. And while the first Halloween could be considered, well, yeah, like a real horror just because someone that's a lunatic could happen. But these two films dive deep into something scary that could happen or did happen that makes you think of humanity as a group that you should be afraid of in a horror environment, or at least horror films. And I will start off with the 1984 TV British film documentary Threads. Bear in mind, this was during the Cold War, and Threads had a message about what a nuclear holocaust would be. And why it's called Threads, I think it has to do with holding things together. For example, society is a thread, a web, made by one spider. Now imagine that this web contains everything in society, economy, etc. Your livelihood. Things are, well, cozy, except for, in this film, the recession. However, once it breaks, then everything collapses. And this is what leads to a nuclear holocaust that destroys this web and society just collapses. The film really doesn't hold anything back. It shows you raw, gritty things that could happen after a nuke has gone off, with infants to people that had been burnt, radiation. This is literally the aftermath of a fallout. The government cannot control or maintain any order, as looting would occur. This really just shows how humans would react if a nuke went off. Radiation poisoning would kill off the population. The film really just, at the end of the day, is a grim future in this sad, sad world in the film. Even the ending of the film does not give any satisfaction that things will be okay. The film really bases it off of anti-nuke or anti-war, but technically it's mainly anti-nuclear weaponry, which could annihilate humanity. Those that survive will suffer the most. Babies would be born deformed or stillborn. This film goes places that makes you think, if this were to happen, what will you do? Disease, famine, anything you drink or eat has radiation in it. The particles, animals dead, your loved ones dead. No one could survive. And at the end of the film, it just shows that the future is just grim. And since this is sort of a documentary about a worst case scenario, you do have a narrator that talks about what goes on at specific points when things happen. From the famine to when soldiers have to deal with the situation, even text shows what could lead up to a nuclear disaster. And while it's interesting to see like a what if a war ends up occurring in a specific region in the Middle East with Russia, at the end of the day, the people that suffer are the civilians. And what can you take away from this film? Well, that it's just scary. those that are trying to figure out the situation and deal with it and just survive. The higher ups try their best, but society just collapses. Police try their best, but there's not much they can do. In the end, Threads is not a happy movie. It is a very, very dark, gritty 80s film that I would say is a horror film, mainly a what if. Even though it is fiction, the fact that this still could be relevant to any time is what's scary. And it's scary to see that people could live their life normally only for it to be shattered like that. So Threads, it's more of just a depressing ride to see society fall and whether or not there's even any hope left. And this film is very graphic too, so it does carry that horror-ish vibe of just the grittiness. To be honest, you could think of monsters, creatures, anything in horror, but this is actually true horror. Nuclear holocaust. That's the scariest thing that would annihilate humanity. So Threads is something else. I liked how they were showing different aspects of what characters were doing throughout their life before the tragic demise of society, which is a thread, and you just see it collapse. I mean, it's very scary to think of a nuke just being dropped and that's it. Whatever livelihood you had. Yeah, nothing happy about this movie or TV movie. It was pretty much documentary about a what if. So it's kind of like a mixture between a documentary and a movie. Now, this specific film is based off of actually a specific thing that happened in Belarus during the war. Come and see. This one is, I would say, it's not for everybody. It's actually probably a tough watch for most people. I was able to handle it because I know most of the historical aspects of this period of time that happened, and I get that it's terrible. So most people, viewer discretion is advised. Come and See shows the viewpoint of a teen who joins the partisans during the war in occupied Belarus. Of course, we all know World War II was a terrible, terrible war that killed millions worldwide. This film takes a different perspective when it comes to the partisans in Belarus. But what this film does that's intriguing is how it looks. It looks like your typical 80s horror flick from that time. It's grainy, the atmosphere is creepy, and heck, the way it's shot is very interesting. The music is also unsettling, the ambient sound. The surrounding for the character is uncertain, whether or not his enemies ahead or is there something dangerous behind him or what. And it's a very intriguing World War II 80s flick, but not the typical war film. While we follow the main character's viewpoint, he goes through different periods of several months as you see his perspective of the slaughter of a village, helping some of the partisans, those resisting the Germans, only for him to just change through the span of several months. The climax of this movie is probably the darkest you could get from a 80s flick, as this sort of stuff happened, and you could really say that, yeah, it's scary. This village actually was based off of a real massacre that occurred at a village, and a division in the German army, which was made up of convicted criminals, which, you know, when you put criminals in a war zone, what do you think they will do? This film also does not hold anything back. It shows every rawness of war and war crimes carried out by the Nazis. The climax of the movie is probably one of the biggest moments in this film, to show that humanity is capable of the most terrible things. While a lot of people know about the Holocaust for its death camps, there is another term, Holocaust by bullet. This would be an example of that. But it also just depicts how human beings act during war, that they can do the most terrible things. The real life events that did happen, which is a scary thing about the human mind, this film reflects. The Nazi ideology, certain people don't deserve to live. And while this film really mixes that 80s horror vibe with actual reality of what happened, it's scary. If you could ever find a World War II film in the 80s, which there is a few, but at this point we weren't getting much at this time because by this point it was mainly either Vietnam War films or other types of war films. World War II had been done many times in the 70s and even the 60s, but I always wanted to find a World War II film that was developed in the 80s and had that 80s vibe because I do like 80s films. But this is not an easy watch. I know so much about the atrocities. I could handle these sort of things, but not everybody can. Just like Threads, this is actually a hard watch. Mainly the climax. That's probably the worst scene you could see, is just a massacre of an entire village. So when you have that mixture between the quality and of course the historical aspect, it makes you really think of what humans are capable of even in the darkest times. If you really want something that is horrific, while Threads is a horrific TV film that shows what could happen in a nuclear disaster, the biggest threat you could face anytime, anywhere, would be other humans. But in this film really shows that the scariest thing of all is not a monster in a horror movie. None of those classic 80 horror flicks, because we know they're fictional. We know that these things aren't real. But what Come and See shows is this sort of thing happened. This was real. And it is. Probably the scariest thing you could face is another human that could potentially do harm. I think the reason it intrigued me was, of course, yes, I like World War II history, though this shows a darker side of it, just the genocide. But also the 80s vibe of it too, because I really like that grainy feel to it. It just feels like a horror 80s flick just in World War II. That's what's intriguing about it. It almost plays off as like a horror film when it's not, but it kind of is. It's kind of Come and See is kind of just in this weird area of kind of horror, not horror, but I guess it's more of just how evil humans can be if they follow a specific ideology. So that's what this film just shows you, is just the truth of the matter. And that's what's scary, is just other humans, either in wartime or just chaotic situations. And Come and See just shows that in a brutal way. So these are the two foreign films, one a documentary type film, the other actually just film. While this period of time was like great for filmmaking and just originality, these are very, very dark foreign films that you could watch if you want to be scared by something. Come and See is maybe not as well. No, it is scary in the sense that it happened, but you could still like watch it out of curiosity, even though you should really be prepared for that final climactic scene. Threads is it's actually just scary to think that at any point in any time something like that could just happen in your daily life. And that's even scarier, because Come and See is more of the past. Threads is like, well, any point in time. And yeah, both of these films are not happy 80s films. They're very dark films. Made well. Come and See is made well because of how it was shot. I like the cinematography, and it feels unique, but the subject matter is very touchy. But unfortunately, this sort of stuff happens, so be prepared for that if you decide to watch Come and See. As for Threads, same deal. It doesn't hold nothing back. It shows what the aftermath of a nuclear holocaust looks like, and that's just as harsh. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode. It was kind of more of a downer just because of the subjects that I talked about. It's intriguing to see these 80s films that you probably never heard of. I never heard of these films until later, and I was intrigued to watch them just so I could talk about them, especially Threads in this episode. I watched Come and See a while back. You could check out my review episode for that. And I wanted to bring it up here again just to go into more depth of how it just captures the human mind of how people act. But I hope you enjoyed it nonetheless. If you like what you saw here, you could follow me or subscribe or wherever you're watching, because I have YouTube and Rumble to show off my shows. If you like more of the Pop Culture Talk show, you know where to follow me or subscribe. And yeah, I hope you have a good day. Watch some more happy films or shows. Anyways, peace.